This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by editor Toni Ann Carabello, whose work includes The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Say Yes to the Dress, and Queer Eye, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Toni.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I do have to say, you've also worked on two shows, one of which is my daughter's favorite show, and one of which is my wife loved, which is Rock the Boat for my wife, and Izzy's Koala World, my daughter loves.
Oh, yeah, I've heard a lot of kids, like a lot of people have told me their kids love that show.
Yeah, which is interesting because compared to the other kids stuff that's out there, which is all like explosions and fun, exciting adventure, it's sort of this like really calming
yeah, it was so
exploration of koalas.
I'm glad you liked it.
I guess you've been nominated for an Emmy for Queer Eye, specifically the episode Speedy for Life. Can you tell me, I guess, like, you know, when you started this project, I guess give us a bit of background of the episode for people who haven't seen it, and sort of, you know, what was the footage like that came in when you started getting that for this project?
So Speedy was, or is I feel like he's in his early 20s, was like this rising basketball star in his hometown, gets into a car accident with his mom and his aunt. They both pass away from the accident. He's left as a paraplegic in a wheelchair. And so when we first got the episode, I was like, oh, this is going to be a sad one, obviously. But it turned out to be one of the best. Like, I've loved editing it because they really seemed to like the kid, you know, like they wanted to help him. They, I think for the first time ever, paid for his apartment for a year. He was living in an apartment that was not at all handicap accessible.
Yeah.
So he couldn't get in and out of the shower and like things that should just be for a kid like that. And so they set up the whole apartment with everything being accessible to him. And it was great. Like, me and my producer, the whole time we were working on it, it was like everything I would like watch, I'd be like, I'm crying. Like, it just felt good to work on something that felt like it made a real difference in somebody's life, not like a lot of reality shows, you know?
Well, and what's interesting is he's struggling with the fact that he's in a wheelchair after the accident, but he's also trying to make his life positive and like trying to turn his, because that was the interesting thing that sort of stood, like, he wants to be, I don't want to say an influencer, but like he's on TikTok, but he wants to become like a motivational speaker.
Yeah, but it was interesting because you're right. I think internally, like even editing it, I'm like, it's so hard to show that he wants to be a motivational speaker, but he's really not facing what happened to him. So I think the guys really helped him realize, like, you have to accept what happened, that this is your life, and then you can be value to other people. But until you accept it and realize here's where you are, but you have all this to give other people, and like maybe people could kind of learn from you and even like want to dress a certain way to be like flashier. And like, I think that was all part of that idea of like, I'm going to be okay with, or I have to be as okay as I can be with this situation, but maybe that helps other people.
I got into sound designing at a point when things were just developing. I was really fascinated by the idea that dialogue, effects, and music were all components of the soundtrack to a film, which had never occurred to me before. What gets me excited is coming up with sound ideas that do match picture, but also is not just the equivalent of what you're seeing on screen. I'm Eugene Garrity, and this is my course on sound design.
So like when you're working on this project, like I can only assume you could probably tell me a bit better, but like you're getting footage as they're shooting. So like they might be shooting over a week or two and you're getting the footage each day.
We get they had shot this, it was
so
all
they shot everything. Okay, so you weren't
Yeah.
able to like give feedback and be like, we need
No.
something like
Yeah, it
that.
came all shot. So and then it was just, you know, like trying to figure out, okay, what is the sort of through line? It can't just be about, here's this kid, he had this tragedy, and now he's going to get all this stuff, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know,
You're
like,
gonna get a
which it
lot of
can,
calls.
right, it can be like, could get a little bit like that. Like, you have to
Yeah.
remember, like, what is he doing to try to, you know, change his life, and then how the guys can help influence that change. And out of all of them I had worked on, I mean, a lot of them feel like this, but I felt like in the beginning, he's quiet. He like
Mhm.
felt funny even talking. And by the end, I felt like he had sort of, you could almost see, which is so subtle, but I felt like you could see his like confidence had
Mhm.
gotten a little bit more, where he was like just feeling better about himself.
So when you were tackling this, because like when I saw this, I sort of see it as like, I don't want to say a collection of montages, but it feels very much like you have like this. They talk to him about something, and then we see like them showing them, and then we, is there a particular part of the episode that was really difficult for you to create the structure for, or that you were struggling with?
The very intro of him was tough, because it was so much information that felt relevant. Like, you
Mhm.
wanted to know he was this basketball player, and then you had to know about the accident. Then you had to know about his like influencing, so that we had a struggle of how to put that together and not to be everything just sad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so thankfully the guys are always funny, and even in a sad situation can insert a little bit of humor to things. And
Yeah.
so that part was the trickiest. The little like excursions that they go on,
Yeah.
those are usually the easier parts. It's usually the top, setting him up, who he is. And on this episode, usually the guys are in the car and they set everything up.
Yeah.
But because of his situation, they couldn't go to his house because it wasn't accessible. And so it was a little bit different, but it worked out okay.
How do you find that balance of, because like you said, like you're talking about the accident, you're talking about like passing of his mom and aunt, you're talking about his TikTok. Um, but like how do you find that balance? Because he he's not like in the episode when it starts, he's not depressed about himself. Like he's
Right.
trying to become better. And
Mhm.
so how do you find that balance so you're not just saying like, here's a really sad story,
Right.
we're going to make it better? Because it wasn't that in the episode. It was
Mhm.
very much like, no, he's trying to make things better. So how do you find that balance so that we don't feel sorry for him but want to cheer him on in his
Right.
goals?
Yeah, that is the tough part. And it really ends up just being coming down and down. Like, you know, originally our first cut was like, we're like, this is so sad, you know, and you sort of have to know that he's trying. Like,
Yeah.
he knows this has happened, but he wants to change, and he wants, his goals are to do this or that and be sort of an influencer, but like you said, like more of a motivational kind of speaker. So it really just keeps shrinking parts, and then realizing, oh, you know what, we don't have enough about this part. And they have a, you know, pretty long conversation, so you can find those pieces that you need. But it's kind of just like, that was a work in progress throughout the edit of
Mhm.
like, okay, we're have too much of this, and it can't be all gloom and doom and sad, even though the story is obviously very sad, but you want it to be more hopeful, like you said, and you want to root for him
Mhm.
and not just feel sorry for him.
Yeah. How much, like, do you guys have like story editors on set or producers on set who are helping sort of mold the story, or is
They
it
have
more you
field
guys in post?
producers out, yeah, out there that do sort of set up the groundwork of like,
Mhm.
here's sort of the story and here's the direction. Sometimes things will take a more unexpected turn that you're like, oh, this is interesting. But usually you sort of know the story. And then
Mhm.
we have producers in post that then sort of whittle it down for me. And then it's sort of a collaboration after that with
And
everybody.
I have to ask, who gets to choose the quotes?
Oh, the producers, usually the
Okay,
producers
so
don't
you
come
guys
up
don't
with
get to
like a
throw in
big,
quote
no,
ideas. Ah.
no, but I did another episode where the guy was like this obsessive Kiss fan.
Oh yeah.
And he was great. And so the producer had fun finding kiss like quotes that were like relevant. But yeah, they usually submit a bunch, and then the EPs and maybe Netflix too, then all kind of pick the ones.
Now, have you heard about anything from Speedy since?
No, I haven't. I'd be curious. Yeah, like I should ask the EPs if they've gotten any updates or. But
Now, when you're working on, shows like Queer Eye or like um, Housewives of Beverly Hills or what have you, they have a structure that's sort of in place.
mhm.
What's your freedom within that structure to sort of play and experiment?
I think most of the time we have a fair amount of freedom, like especially like on Queer Eye, it's a little more structured in
Mhm.
terms of like you sort of know the stories, you have to figure it out, but it's there. When you're on more shows like The Housewives, sometimes you'll like find something that nobody thought was anything, and you could either make it funny or you could make it more dramatic or play it up. And I would say most of the time people are open as long as it's good and it makes sense.
Mhm.
I've always felt like I had freedom, and I was always able to go to like if I disagree with a story or the producers, together we disagree, to go to the EPs and kind of stay why. And I think, most of the time people are always open to working together and figuring out what's the best way to go.
Like I said, you've been nominated for an Emmy. So if you were talking to the voters,
Mhm.
what part of the episode, like usually it says like for your consideration when you send
Yeah.
the DVDs out, what part would you choose for that?
I love the ending. I mean, I feel like the beginning obviously is important, but I love his reaction when he sees the place, when they pull in and they're like, we've paid your rent. Like, I feel like he genuinely looks so like surprised and touched. And
Mhm.
then he sees the place. And then my favorite part was they go upstairs and the little girl, like his little niece comes running out and they sort of like release the butterflies. And, that part always got me because I'm like, he looked genuinely touched by it all and like
Mhm.
just so happy.
Well, and it seems like the niece was like it seems like it naturally happened. Like she didn't,
Yeah, it did. She
wasn't
just
coached
really
or
ran.
anything.
No, she just, as soon as he walked out, she ran over and the little butterfly like landed on his foot, which he always felt like his mom had, like there was this connection. So I thought that part to me was like I said, you'd have to see the top to know what
Mhm.
happened, but that's my favorite part.
Was there anything in the episode that got cut out that you wish could stay in, but just because of time or just didn't work with the story?
Trying to think. I don't think anything did. I think at one point we might have cut one of the like field trips, but then I
Mhm.
think it ended up coming back. Oh, it was Bobby taking him to see the apartments. We weren't sure if that was like going to give away the idea that he got, like that he actually did, but then we realized like it wouldn't. Angie sort of needed
Yeah,
to
kind
see
of
what
sets it
it was
up.
looking at. Yeah. So then we ended up putting it back. So I think most things made it in. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I think about that montage and the amount of times it was like they would walk into a place and it'd be like, you can't reach the microwave.
Right.
The
Yeah.
microwave's too high, or
Mhm.
there's no bars for you to help get into the
Yeah.
bathroom, or
Yeah. It's
like
things
all
that I
these.
think obviously we don't think about. And then when you look, and those were supposed to be handicap accessible apartments, some of them,
Oh
and they
wow,
really
that
weren't. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, they might have been better than regular apartments, but he still like couldn't brush his teeth or.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what is something that you learned from working on this project that you'll probably use in other projects from this point forward?
I felt like was one of the most, which I love, like a real story. Like
Yeah.
it had a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, but it's all contained in that hour where like the Housewives or a lot of other shows are series,
Hmm.
right? So they're connected. So you're not wrapping up. It's not like Housewives starts with like usually a very specific story and then there's this arc and then it ends, right? So for this, it felt like old school to me of like how I started, which was more like at MTV and they used to do like more biographies kind of.
Hmm.
And I loved that, like how you could tell the story and then figuring out how do you tell it so it's like sort of clever and not just like, here's what happened to this person, and infusing personality and fun and all that stuff in it. So I really like enjoyed that. And I think it made me think about story a little differently, because it is always a puzzle to figure out. But then you do start to be like, oh, okay, that worked here and that. So I think has changed a lot of ways that I think or edit from now on.
So one of the like you've mentioned Beverly Hills a couple times,
Mhm.
and that is a world unto itself,
Yeah.
that whole machine. Are you a fan of that show when you're working on it, or are you just like, I can't, I see them too much?
I out of all the Housewives of Beverly Hills, I enjoy, like, I am a fan. I mean, when I work on it, I tend to not watch the whole season. So sometimes I'll like work on it and I'm like, what happened after my like 3 episodes? I won't see as much, but I still am a fan of it. I mean, it is a whole other thing, but yeah, I do tend to still like to watch them. If I'm not working on them, I definitely will watch.
So I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Guilty pleasure. I mean, maybe Housewives. I mean, I like a lot
Just
of
Beverly Hills or all of them?
I kind of watch all of them. I mean, I've worked on so many, so I kind of do watch some of them. That's always a guilty pleasure.
Do you ever listen to Bitch Sesh, the podcast?
Once in a while, I'll listen to it, which I always find amusing because I love to watch or listen to what people who are fans, like if I worked on an episode, to hear what people have to say about it and things that like I would never have picked up on. That's the thing that like sticks to them, that you're like, oh, okay, that's the thing.
What was something that stuck to them that you were kind of surprised?
Well, when I worked on it a couple of years ago, and it was in the middle of when Erica, her husband at the time, supposedly had like done all this stuff, fraud or whatever it was. And she was at like, no big deal. And she was at a dinner party with all the women, and this huge fight like broke out. And it was like so many people like afterwards, like texting me or being like, that was your episode, like when she made that, like they'll pick up on like a look, which like a lot of times as an editor, I find like sometimes I do things that I'm like, I think I'm the only one who finds it funny, or like if there's a look or you put in a shot of something that makes you laugh, and then to see other people sort of like got that too. And that happens a lot on those shows because you can have more fun with it. Like, so a lot of times people, I'm like, you notice that? Like, I didn't think anyone would even notice it. So it's fun to hear.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
No problem. Thank you.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.